Okay, let's turn the focus back on oil. Oil up sharply today. We heard about that attack on tankers in the Caspian, no, the Black Sea, I'm sorry. And of course, that raises the prospect that Ukraine will do more, will launch more attacks to restrict flows of Russian oil and perhaps even Kazakh oil by default. Let's get more from Matt Smith, lead oil analyst at Kpler. Thanks very much for joining us. I was getting the Caspian and the Black Sea mixed up there. Thanks for joining us. Of course, we don't know much about this latest attack, but Ukraine seems determined to keep up pressure on Russian oil and could choke off supply to some extent.
Absolutely. It has definitely been this evolution, right? So we saw even at the turn of this year, they were putting limpet mines onto tankers as well. And so that opens them up, right, to be able to put a limpet mine on a tanker anywhere in the world. You were just getting sort of Caspian and Black Sea, talking about those different ones. There was an attack in the Caspian Sea just yesterday. No. Today is just saying about it's the Black Sea there off of Novorossiysk. And you see a lot of crude being loaded there. You do see some Russian crude, but it's a majority of that is Kazakh crude. And so these attacks really are just continuing because it's hurting the Russians, right? It's hitting them where it hurts. And so we've been seeing the onshore drone strikes on the refineries, on the terminals. Now they're taking it to sea as well.
And meanwhile, Russia has been letting more and more of its oil sit on the high seas in the Arabian Sea and off China. A lot of Russian oil at sea right now.
Yes, you know what? In terms of floating storage, we are seeing that at a multi-year high. It's at about 120 million barrels. And only a small part of that is Russian in the grand scheme of things, though, maybe 20, 30 million barrels, something like that. About 20 20 is Russian, 30 is Venezuelan, 50 million of it, though, is Iranian crude. And so you're seeing this theme coming through of sanctioned barrels being kind of stuck on the water.
Right. So not all that oil is actually originated in Russia. And Iranian oil also massive quantities sitting on the ocean.
Yes, and so it's not just the floating storage that we're seeing. And where you typically see that for Iranian crude is off of China, off of Malaysia, because essentially China is the only buyer for Iranian crude. So what they will do is they won't leave it parked in the Mideast Gulf there. They will take it to that demand hub and essentially leave it in a parking lot sat offshore there, waiting for the Chinese to bring it onshore. Now, you could make the argument that the Chinese are showing some hesitancy in buying that crude. They're shying off because of sanctions. You could also be skeptical about this and say, well, maybe they're putting the squeeze onto these, onto the Iranians, onto the Venezuelans, etc., to get that price lower, because inevitably that Venezuelan crude, that Iranian crude can't be sold anywhere else. And so it's partly to do with that. We're also seeing exports have continued to increase through last year from Iran up to about 2 million barrels a day. They do not want to shut in production, so they'd rather get it on a tanker and put it out into the world rather than cut back on that output.
Is the market essentially glutted right now, the oil market?
Yes, and so we have seen commodities on water increased by a couple of 100 million there. So we have seen onshore inventories increasing, but the majority of it is still on the water. And so it's in transit, it's in floating storage. But because it's not making its way into inventories, and also because it's going into Chinese inventories as well, it's having a muted impact on weighing on prices. And so you've still got that surplus that's going to keep coming through for this year. And it's going to be very much front loaded here, Andy, in terms of the first 6 months of the year. We're looking at a surplus of about 500 million barrels. Ultimately, that will make its way into onshore inventories. But until it really does, then it's not really having the impact on prices.
Frustratingly, obviously, for Vladimir Putin, a lower global oil price and discounts that he has to accept on Russian oil have been cutting into the value of Russia's international oil sales.
Yeah, absolutely. They have been. We still see that Russian crude coming out of pace, right? Because as you see those refineries getting struck, it just means they can't run it through those domestic refineries. And so they're able to export more of those barrels. That said, one thing that Putin does have in his favor is these pockets of geopolitical tension. Obviously, we've had this with Venezuela, all the uncertainty surrounding that at the beginning of the year here. The Ukraine drone strikes continue to lend some support to prices as well. And then you've got the situation with Iran. And so all of these factors here are lending support to oil prices. So if you looked at it from a fundamental perspective, we should be anchored in the 50s, but yet here we are just pushing mid-60s for Brent.
Oh, that's interesting. But Brent should be, in theory, substantially below $60.
Yeah, there's definitely a risk premium that's priced in there, and it's very difficult to argue against the increase that we've seen in recent days here has not been related to a geopolitical premium working into prices. Yeah, so fundamentals, as I mentioned, you've just got this oversupply, you've got this non-OPEC supply coming to market here at the same time as OPEC has increased barrels over the last 9 months or so. They have hit pause because obviously they're concerned, but it doesn't mean that non-OPEC supply is not continuing to come and increase.
Matt, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Matt Smith, lead oil analyst at Kpler.